Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Christophe Polo, Senior Market Manager Construction at Huntsman Polyurethane. And I'm glad to welcome you to this Huntsman webinar. This event is dedicated to sustainable construction and the contribution of polyurethane insulation. A few months ago, we held a webinar about energy efficiency and fire safety. The event raised a lot of interest and gathered many attendees from all over the world. More factors play a major role in our industry and impact the future of our business. I then decided to dedicate today's event to another major trend, sustainability. To present this webinar and give you insight and solutions to the subject, I have invited an expert in the field. Our speaker holds a degree in industrial chemistry, and she joined ICI Polyurethane, now Huntsman Polyurethanes, in 1988 in the Research and Development Department. In 1995, she joined the International Environment Affairs Group and became the company expert in life cycle assessment. Since 2000, she managed a variety of environmental affairs dossiers, such as climate change, sustainable development, and environmental labeling, both for Huntsman and for several polyurethane-related industrial associations. Our speaker is Srecha Kotaji, Global Material and Industry Sustainability Senior Expert at Huntsman Polyurethane. For your information, all participants are muted. The webinar is expected to last 30 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. This webinar is recorded, and the recording will be shared after the session. During this session, you'll be invited to take part by answering one poll question. You can also share any question anytime during the webinar using the Q&A panel on your right. So at first, I will introduce the company Huntsman, who we are and how we have built strong knowledge and expertise in the foam insulation. Then we will talk about the trends impacting the construction sector, why this trend has become important, what are the various tools and concepts we need to better understand in order to be able to develop solutions responding to the challenges. Then we will see how Huntsman responds to the new requirements created by the changing trend that impact our business and how we can help you. Finally, we will open up for the Q&A session. So let's start with a brief introduction to Huntsman. Huntsman is an American company founded by Mr. John Huntsman about 50 years ago. Today, Huntsman Corporation is a publicly traded global manufacturer and marketer of differentiated and specialty chemicals. Our products number in thousands and are sold worldwide to manufacturers serving a broad and diverse range of consumer and industrial end markets. ICI Polyurethane, later acquired by Huntsman, was one of the first companies to introduce the technology used to produce rigid foam more than 60 years ago. We pioneered further with the right innovative blowing agents, and the first continuous system production was implemented. In 2010, we enforced the Huntsman Sustainability Council and produced our first final annual report. In 2013, we acquired Oxide LP manufacturer, a US-based producer of proprietary bio-based and recycle-based polyols. Huntsman continued to further develop the rigid continuous business with the years, both in fire process and quality excellence. Finally, in 2020, we started to introduce polyols with a circular content in new developments in Europe. The objective of our webinar today is to provide you with clear information on sustainability construction trend and how we can support your growth in this complex environment. Sustainable construction is a fairly complex matter. With this webinar, we will give you some theory and key principles and tools used. So now, join me in welcoming Shrecha Kotaji, Global Material and Industry Sustainability Senior Expert at Huntsman Polyurethane. Shrecha, floor is yours.
Thank you, Christophe, for the introduction. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. When looking at the construction sector in general and the metal face composite panel application, there are several major trends that influence the way we build and the materials we choose, such as energy efficiency, fire safety performance, prefabrication and modular system, sustainable construction, climate resilience, and acoustic comfort. In a previous webinar, we focused on energy efficiency and fire safety. This time, we will focus on a trend of increasing importance, sustainable construction. The building sector has a great impact on the three pillars of sustainability. From an environmental perspective, construction represents 50% of the raw materials extracted and represent 40% of the energy used and the greenhouse gas emitted. With people spending 90% of their time indoors, it is important to build comfortable spaces, but also affordable to eat. The construction sector is also a key driver of our economy. Today, we will focus more specifically on the environmental pillar. What are the tools we can use to reduce the environmental impact and how polyurethane insulation is contributing. With its used impact on both energy consumption and CO2 emission, energy efficiency of building is a key milestone towards sustainable construction. We are not going to go too much into the details of the energy efficiency trend, as this was covered, as mentioned by Christophe, in more details in a previous webinar, which is still accessible on our internet website. But let's review some of the key aspects anyway. The whole trend started after the signature in 1997 of the Kyoto Protocol, aimed at reducing the amount of greenhouse gases emitted by human activities. In 2002, the European Union implemented its first version of the Energy Performance Building Directive. It introduced the obligation of providing a building energy performance certificate and the obligation for member states to impose a minimum energy performance. This directive, that has been revised already 3 times, introduced very key concepts. The nearly zero energy building concept, which requires member states to define the most optimal thermal performance per climate and region, and also the obligation of all new buildings to be nearly zero energy since beginning of this year. With the Paris Agreement on climate change in 2015, further efforts to reduce CO2 emissions were required. As a response, with the European New Green Deal, whose ambition is for the EU to become carbon neutral by 2050, the European Union has launched a series of initiatives such as the Renovation Wave that will double the initial thermal renovation target, accompanied by adequate funding and promotion mechanisms. All these developments create a huge opportunity for polyurethane insulation, which is the most efficient, large volume, conventional insulation material, and which became a material of choice to achieve high energy efficiency in building. When we look at the typical path towards the zero energy 6-step design principle, we see that polyurethane can play indeed a key role in each of these steps. I'm not going to go in all the details and only highlight the key applications, such as insulation boards, panel and spray foam for high insulation envelope and airtightness, the high energy efficient appliances, but also the use of polyurethane in the production and delivery of renewable energy. This demonstrates that the high insulation performance, and versatility of polyurethane make it a key component of zero energy building. Before going further with this presentation, I would like you all to participate to the poll question to get your views on sustainable construction trends. And for this short exercise, I will give the floor back to Christophe.
Thanks, Fresha. So please use the panel on your right to answer. Question is, what are the biggest challenges you face on sustainability? More than one answer is possible. Cost, customer willingness to pay, knowledge, lack of solutions, regulation, or other. You have 10 seconds to answer, and then we will look at the results together. So based on all the answers, it's essentially a cost or customer willingness to pay for the sustainability. Fredsa, back to you.
Thank you, Christophe.
We'll talk a little bit later on that outcome.
Okay, thank you, Christophe. Time to get back to our presentation. As we are moving toward a drastic reduction of the building energy demand, we also start to realize how important the impact of the building material has become. In this chart, we see that the energy consumption of a typical low energy building has been reduced by at least 75% compared to the pre-2000 building standards. At the same time, we see that the contribution of the embedded energy in the building material, that means the energy needed to produce the materials themselves, has increased, and today can represent more than 30% of the building life cycle energy use. This means that as we move towards a low carbon economy, not only do we need to reduce further the energy demand for heating and cooling, but we also need to look at materials that can lower the environmental impact of the building. This trend is the reason why today construction material producers are pressured to provide more information on the environmental impact of their product, and why key policymakers are pushing for transformation of the whole sector by setting new policies, new standards, and incentives. These are aspects we are going to explore further today. But before looking at how we can reduce the contribution of the building materials on the overall building environmental performance, we need to better understand how environmental performance is measured and communicated. First, let's see how the environmental impact is measured. To do so, we use a methodology called life cycle assessment, also referred to LCA. It is a science-based assessment that considers the environmental impact along the product life cycle, from the extraction of the raw material, their transformation, the various manufacturing processes, the transport, the use, and disposal. An LCA will give us a so-called environmental profile that will show how the product manufacturing, use, and disposal will impact different environmental compartments, such as global warming or acidification, or many others, with some examples in this slide. LCA studies provide information about the benefits and the drawbacks associated with the product once decided to use. When it comes to assessing the environmental impact of construction materials, the LCA International Standards makes it very clear that the end-use application and all the relevant ancillaries required for the proper installation and functioning of the building element needs to be considered. In the next two slides, we will show you the result of two LCA studies that illustrate how PU insulation performs versus alternative insulant in specific end-use applications. These studies were commissioned by PU Europe, the European Federation of Polyurethane Insulation Producers, and were carried out by third parties. We will show LCA graphs that may seem complex, but I will explain how to interpret them as we go along. In this first example, the LCA study calculated the environmental impact associated with designing a two-story single-family residential house with the same thermal performance for the envelope and the same constructed raw surface areas. Thanks to the reduced building element thickness and reduced ancillaries for the installation of the thinner PU boards, it resulted that, as shown in the graph, that compared to the alternative as stone wool insulation, both building designs have similar environmental profile. Indeed, from an LCA perspective, differences lower than 20% are not considered significant, and that is what the green shade shows us. During the study, we also looked at quantifying the living space area saved and found out that for such a small dwelling, at least 4 square meters of 4 square meters of valuable living space, the size of a small shower room, could be saved by using thin PU insulation layers in the building envelope. This was believed also to improve the property rent or the sales value. In the second example, the LCA study focused on the design of a commercial building with a steel deck roof and metal-faced insulated panels in the walls. LCA showed that in most impact categories, PU performed similarly than stone wool, except that for global warming and acidification, PU performed better. The study demonstrated that the use of PU, with its low density, translates into a much lighter roof design that required less metal support than compensate for the intrinsic higher embedded impact of a complex material such as polyurethane. These are just 2 case studies, and we know that they cannot be extrapolated to all the construction detailing and solution. What we wanted to show here is that polyurethane insulation can provide buildings with very good environmental performance, as well as very high energy efficiency. In order to simplify the calculation of the environmental impacts of buildings and to encourage the demand of construction products that cause less stress to the environment, the construction sector has seen the development since the late 90s of what we call environmental product declaration, or EPDs. EPDs are based on LCA studies. They are third-party verified and are now based on international agreed standards, which define the LCA rules to follow, what we call the product category rules. In Europe, we have 2 important standards to consider. EN 15804, Amendment 2, is the standard applicable to all construction materials. Based on this document, CENTICI 88, which is the standardization committee responsible for insulation product under the construction product regulation, has developed the standard EN 16783, which is applicable to all insulation materials. This standard is currently being updated to reflect the changes of the amendments. There are also a series of national EPD schemes that were developed prior to the European harmonization activity, and which are still very much in use today. Most of them have aligned themselves to the European norm, although systems like in France, Belgium, and Netherlands impose some additional country-specific rules. Huntsman has been very active in the European standardization process and can provide you with more detailed information on the procedures to follow to do the LCAs to establish the EPDs. EPDs are owned by the product manufacturer and are an ideal tool to influence specifier and ultimately the material choices. It is important for the product manufacturer to identify the most relevant EPD scheme. Today, indeed, the use of LCA and EPDs in construction is driven by both regulatory and market incentives. For example, in the Netherlands, LCA EPD data are needed to be provided by the construction material producer so that the building environmental performance can be measured and reported. Failing to do so, overestimated default value will be used that may result in disqualifying the product in the construction project. In Italy and soon in Sweden, green public procurement also requires EPDs of materials. In France and Belgium, when a producer wishes to make an environmental declaration in his advertisement, he also needs to provide EPD as supportive documents. Next to the legal obligation, there are also a series of market-driven incentives to provide EPDs. This is the case for all green building certification schemes, such as BREEAM from the UK, LEED from the US, DGNB in Germany, HQ in France, or Totem in Belgium, to mention only but a few. These certification schemes are getting so popular that architects and project owners see them adding value to the property for sales. In addition, providing upfront EPDs is seen showing the company commitment to contribute to better environments and render their product more attractive to potential buyer and specifier. EPD can also help producers themselves to optimize the environmental performance of their product offering by allowing making the right choices for raw material and optimizing their processes. Besides the requirements to provide EPDs, green building certification also reward construction products offering additional features, so-called credits, such as having recycled or bio-based content, or the absence of blowing agents with high global warming potential, such as HFCs. There are also national schemes that would impose a minimum environmental criteria, and to name only one, the Italian Ecobonus tax incentive that requires a minimum of recycled content to be eligible for a tax rebate. The BREEAM scheme rewards also products for which the chemical suppliers can demonstrate compliance to the ISO 14001 standard, which is the international standard for environmental management. Please note that our production site in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, is certified. Our portfolio can help fulfilling the green building certification criterion and help access the relevant incentives. In this table, you can see, for example, the overview of the circular content, both as recycled or bio-based material. Our current portfolio for metal face panel is offering. The first two rows provide you the circular content at the polyol system level. The next two rows provides the circular content calculated for the foam itself. As you can see, our two latest developments offer an increased circular content, either based on recycled material, like for our Daltopyr X HFR, or based on biosourcing for the Daltofoam NFR. And we are working on increasing this offer to respond to the increased expectation in the market. Another important topic for sustainable construction, of course, is the end-of-life management. Due to relatively young, widespread adoption of PU insulation for construction, mainly in the last 3 decades, and due to the long lifespan of the product, very few construction projects with PU insulation waste have reached the end of life. Therefore, large-scale reuse and recycling of PU insulation is not generally practiced at the moment. However, both mechanical and chemical recycling technologies exist today. They need further development and cooperation along the value chain, and new concepts such as design for deconstruction, quality standards for reused material, separate collection at demolition site, and investment in recycling facilities. All these need to be worked out and further implemented. Today, some commercially viable solutions and research programs start to flourish, engaging the key stakeholders to find a sustainable solution to further reduce the environmental impacts of building using polyurethane integration. The list we show here is not exhaustive, and we hope to see more initiatives coming up in the near future. Up to now, most of the sustainable construction initiatives have been based on voluntary initiatives. But this is changing quickly, driven by Euro policymakers and the need to target carbon neutrality by 2050 and a circular economy. Dossiers that we need to follow closely are, first of all, the European Commission Levels Framework for Sustainable Building. This initiative, launched end of 2020, will provide a framework and indicators and a common language for building sustainability, and will be the basis for further policy initiatives and action to include life cycle thinking and circularity in building design in Europe for the coming year. The next important initiative to look at is the European Green Deal Sustainable Product Policy. It will seek integration of circular by design, new eco-labels criteria, but also better green public procurement rules, and possibly a new way to disclose environmental performance of products. The EU Green Deal Sustainable Environmental Strategy is expected in spring 2021, and this will also focus on policy measures for a circular and sustainable building stock, including embodied carbon approaches. And last but not least, a possible integration of EPD-like information in the construction product CE marking declaration itself. In conclusion, we can say that already today polyurethane insulation is a key contributor to sustainable construction. The optimal design, the choice of insulation material, should ultimately be based on the highest thermal performance we can achieve, the durability of the material, but also the ease of installation. Huntsman will continue to improve the performance of PU and its circularity. We also recommend you all to engage, provide, and use adequate environmental data to support the building performance assessment initiatives and help demonstrating the key role PU insulation material can play in a more sustainable built environment. Thank you a lot for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I will now give the floor back to Christophe.
Thank you, Shpresa. Thank you for providing these insights. So we are now going to open the session for the Q&A. And let's start with the first one. Recycling of PU is a complex challenge from the technical point of view. What is your position, in this topic? Will you take it or?
Yeah, it's okay. So indeed, recycling of PU is complex. From a technology point of view, we do have knowledge on different routes to recycle the material. The biggest challenge, of course, is to reach the waste material itself when it comes at the end of life. What will be the quality? What will be the consistency of the flow? We do have experts in-house that can help if you have more specific questions. But this is indeed a topic that we are looking into to solve.
Okay. Can you give examples of building products using your materials that have achieved the Green Certification Award? Oh, that's a complex one.
It's a complex one. And the answer will not be that simple in the sense that we are providing raw materials for our customers to produce panels. We know that together with this material, we provide information about potential performance, like the recycled content, the bio content, the absence of high GWP blowing agents, that we are ISO certified for our chemical production. So we believe that our material find their way in these projects, but we cannot trace them because that's basically up to the producer of the finished, let's say, panel that will be able to track. But we are quite confident that we indeed will find our material in these certified buildings.
That's all the questions. How does the content of recycled material affect the material properties of the final product? Well, I'm assuming it's on. Well, there is different perspective of
but in fact, for us, whether we use a bio-based or recycled content or whatever, the objective, of course, is to achieve the performance at the material level and the panel level. So we will use the material in a way that it will not compromise the performance of the product our customers are expecting us to do. So whether it is recycled or not, the performance will be let's say, secured in terms of the foam performance at the
end. Another one is on the impact of the logistic of the PU blocks on LCA, and can it be reduced? That's an interesting one.
Well, I will try. My understanding of the question is, can we reduce further the environmental impact of the PU foam? If that is the question, of course, and that is by choosing different kinds of raw material. But more importantly, and I think that the whole concept of the presentation of today is that it is more important to see how we can reduce the building environmental impact by using PU than to reduce the material intrinsic environmental impact, because the impact might be more relevant by not having, for example, the material being covered with a membrane or a protective element. So if we can design the PU material to be much more durable in its use, you probably achieve easier an environmental improvement than by just focusing on the raw materials themselves. But both need to be looked at, and we are actually doing calculation, like LCA calculation, that can be, let's say, that can guide us to see what will be the best, focusing on the material or the solution or the building solution itself.
Obviously, a lot around LCA. Another one is, from our perspective, what is best to achieve a better LCA for the PU insulation? Increasing the bio content or improving the insulation potential itself?
I think both are relevant, and they will need to be put in the context, like I said, of the building. What application are we looking at? How can we maximize, let's say, the performance itself? Can we make it thinner? Can we make it lighter so that the whole design is more relevant? And obviously looking at bio content or recycled content will also help. But this, of course, needs to be quantified, because it's not because it's recycled or bio that intrinsically LCA will be lower. We need to quantify those activities, how the material has been collected, how it has been transformed. So it's quite complex, but it's something that LCA tool can help us actually guiding in what would be the best way to further reduce the environment.
Yeah, there is a question actually on how the recycled content is comparable to the bio content.
Well, the difference is that because they have different nature, they will have impact in different, what we call environmental indicators. Typically, bio-based resources have more impact on what we call eutrophication, which is alga formation in the water stream, for example, or the land use, and you need more land for biosourcing. Typically, they will have a lower carbon footprint. On the other hand, fossil-based material or recycled material, you will work on different environmental indicators. So you need to have, let's say, overall view to understand what will be better. And it will be a value choice also, a societal value choice. Are we going more to bio? Because there will be also, maybe I didn't mention it here, but Europe is also going to review its bioeconomy. And there will be much more incentive to use more biosourcing to achieve a circular economy. So I think all these elements, I think there will be not one solution for everything. We will need to work with different raw materials. It can be bio, it can be recycled, and all of them will be to be combined in the most optimal way. So we are open basically to the different routes. Also because different resources will have different impact on the performance of the material. And depending on what you need to achieve, some sources will be more adequate than others. And I think we need to keep it open, basically.
There is a lot of questions, so I have to pick. I have to pick the ones which are the most relevant. We will come back to our account managers. Will come back to you for all the questions that we did not answer. One which is a bit linked to what we just discussed is our bio-based raw material coming from non-food and sustainable sources. Are you using certified raw materials? So it's actually not one, but three questions in one. So first, are bio-based raw materials coming from non-food and sustainable sources?
Yeah. So we typically use byproducts either from biodiesel or the agriculture industry. We are not certifying those raw materials at the moment. We do control, let's say, the supply chain and the declaration of our supplier. If there is a need to have a certification on the resource, that's something that can be done.
And the full question was coming also, as I said, it was multiple questions. There was a third one in that question also, was how are you controlling the traceability of those raw materials? So how do we control the traceability of, I'm assuming, the bio content?
Well, basically, we work with our supplier. We have some very strict guidelines also. We do request from our supplier a declaration of what is the sourcing of their material, and we keep track of those. So the moment we need to have full certification, we can actually go back and make sure that this can happen.
Another one which is very interesting is, can you tell what would be your realistic targets as a share of bio-based material in PU material?
Oh, that's, I think, first of all, we will need a timeline. At the moment, most of the bio content is coming from the polyol side. I think that's one of the things. There are also a lot of activities to look at ways to create bio content also from the isocyanate side. This would be more longer term, but okay, there are projects ongoing. Let's say for the next 2030, probably much more than today, but this is something that will have to go steady. And I think, like I said, when we change from a traditional kind of economy to a circular economy, what has to be very clear to people, it will be a multiple ways to achieve circularity. It will be a combination of different routes, a combination of different raw materials that will be available. Economy of scale will be one of the critical elements to achieve a full bio-base, because the industry is using a huge amount of raw material to achieve a lot of benefits for sure. So it's difficult for me to put a number, to be honest. Probably 10 years from now, probably a 50% could be feasible, but maybe less. I don't have a crystal ball. All I know is that it is taken very seriously along the value chain, and I think that's also with the ultimate goal to be circular and carbon neutral by 2050. I think there will be a conversion, different industry working together to achieve this as fast as possible. But I think you have to leave the time to the whole, let's say, circular economy movement and collaboration to take place.
Well, if I may add a couple of comments on there. We through our Terol brand, we have introduced a lot of recycled material, not necessarily bio-based. That's obviously on the B part of our systems. And indeed, the biggest challenge for the industry is indeed on the polymeric API. And there we're working actively on those, but it's not as a simple step.
It's not a simple step. It takes a lot of collaboration, because we have to find sources of biomaterial which have sufficient volume and prospect to grow, because I mean it has to replace quite a lot of fossil-based raw materials. But this is taken up quite seriously. So it's something we know will have to happen. We have a bit of time till 2050, but we should not wait too long to start working, of course, on those.
And one question on the direction also is that is the bio-based material we're using competing against the agro industry, the food?
The food, no. Typically, what we use is not. In fact, the question I would return to the person who asked me the question is, what do you define competitive with the food industry? There are many different definitions of it. We believe that what we are using is not depriving the people from access to food, for sure. That is very clear. Like I said, a lot is based on the biodiesel byproducts, and others are, let's say, they are not, let's say, competing with these sources.
A little bit outside of the bio-based or recycle-based is talking about the lambda or the R. It's mentioned that it's important to save energy. What is our idea and how much we can improve, or what will be the ultimate, I believe, for the next 5 years, within the next 5 years?
Yeah, indeed, the thermal performance is a critical element to achieve low energy with as the less possible material to achieve it. With polyurethane, there is a physical constraint to how low can the thermal conductivity, which is measuring this capacity to keep the heat in control. And this, let's say, theoretical limit is around what we call 18 milliwatts. We do have already developments and options to achieve, let's say, a 2019. Today, I think in average in the industry, you would find 22, 23. So there are already programs to reduce and to get closer to the physical limits. And I think for this, if you have a very specific question, I would recommend to go back to your account manager, who will take contact with our innovation team.
Indeed, and if I could add, last year we did introduce a new ultimate lambda for our solution. So that's a topic of interest, indeed, our local account manager can get in touch with you. Yeah, it's actually a little bit, and we are now all the questions are turning around the same topics. This one is a little bit alike, I would say. So that's probably going to be concluded the question and answer session. What is Huntsman doing regarding the recycling of PU from waste? It seems that it's becoming a more important topic on the future.
Yeah, indeed, it's become important because a circular economy, of course, look at closing the loops and finding a second life and a multiple life, let's say, after the end of the first use. So we do have in-house knowledge on chemical recycling. Obviously, mechanical recycling also, because we do develop the binders that allows basically the binding of the powder or of the scrap materials. We are looking at different routes and what could be actually an optimal way to recycle the rigid foam. The main concern today, and that was mentioned in the presentation, because there is at the moment not huge amount of waste coming back, it is difficult to find a solution that works today. Technically, we can do it. Economically, a lot will depend on how the waste will be collected, how it will be segregated, and how it can actually find its way in a reactor. And this is something we are talking with different players and let's say along the value chain, what could happen and what would be a feasible, let's say, value chain and an organization of the whole take back scheme. This is something that anyway will happen because at the European level, there will be, let's say, more focus into the no longer the demolition of building, but the dismantling and the reuse of the resources. So we are following these debates very closely to see how they will translate into material-specific requirements, because the focus will create, let's say, a stream of material that can then be used for something else. At the moment, there is no stream of materials. We can actually start developing a whole value chain. But this is something which is happening and will happen more in the future. And probably in 2 years from now, we will be able to tell more about what is going to happen.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Spreza. Thank you all for all your questions. There is more that have been asked. We do not have the time to cover them. We'll get back to you with answers, specific answers. So we have come to the end of this event. As I mentioned at the beginning, this webinar was recorded, and we will share the presentation in a follow-up email. In this follow-up email, you will also find a link to a survey that will help us to improve our next edition. So don't underestimate that. We thank you all very much for attending our webinar and sharing your common interest in sustainability building. We hope that you enjoy the time with us and have learned something today. It was a great session. We thank you all from where you are in all your respective areas for being with us at this event. Thank you, and have a great evening, great afternoon, end of the day, and a great day. Bye now.
Thank you.